Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday, January 9th, 2019 episode of Free Webinar Wednesdays. Our first show, although it will be somewhat of an abbreviated version of 2019. This is Eric Cook, and I'm with WSI Digital Marketing, where we work with businesses and organizations on helping them better understand and leverage the power of the internet as a strategic business tool. Hop over to poweredbywsi.com to learn more about what we do and all the fun we get to have with our clients online. My good friend and Free Webinar Wednesday co-founder and partner, Mr. Jeff Simpkins from CBCI, is not able to join us today, although there may be the possibility that we might see Jeff on future shows in 2019, so keep your fingers crossed. Not that I mind doing these solo, but it's always good to have a co-host join me. So hopefully Jeff will be back at some point down the road. The webinar, as I mentioned in my intro, is going to be a relatively short one. I don't have actually much content to really talk about today. I don't know how many folks are actually even going to be joining live because we had a little bit of a scheduling snafu with the folks at GoToMeeting, now part of the LogMeIn environment. And so hopefully I've not had time to actually push out updates, but when I got into the system and tried to just update the show details as to when shows were going to officially be held and make sure that everybody had the agenda and the calendar, I noticed that for some reason the show had expired within GoToMeeting at the end of the year. And I don't know if that was a limitation on the GoToMeeting platform or what. The show had been reoccurring for 280 some instances, and it just disappeared. And unfortunately, despite the fact that technology should allow you to just reinstate a show, in my opinion, that was not the case. And so we had to recreate the show, which means everybody had to get reinvited. That means we have brand new links. And we've not yet had time to go back through and see what that actually has done for all of the hyperlinks that folks that used to show up on a pretty regular basis, bookmarked and set into their calendars. So we have to do a little bit proactive, and we've been spending some time trying to get that figured out. And as such, have just really not been able to focus a whole heck of a lot on a show for today. So what I thought I would do is provide you with an opportunity. It's no secret if you've spent any time on Free Webinar Wednesdays and learn about what it is we do here at WSI. A vast majority of our work is done in the financial services and the community banking space, and I've talked about a couple of webinars that we have done under my banker education series, my BES program. And we did one just the other day with some really smart folks from FinTech Forge talking about their innovation lab. And while this certainly has a little bit of a banker feel to it, the thing that I thought was really interesting about the webinar, and I flipped over to our WSI site, if you go into the blog and you take a look at BES episode 19, we talk about their Alloy Labs. So FinTech Forge is a company that really focuses on the technology in the financial space. JP Nichols and Jason Hendricks are veterans in that space. They've been around for a very, very long time, speaking both domestic and internationally. And the webinar is available. It's just short of an hour. You can view it here on the blog post. It walks through some of the things that they've identified. They've got an initial group of 12 financial institutions from around the country that have decided to come on board as the founding members to help get it off the ground. The thing that, even if you're not in the banking space, that I would think that you would be interested in taking away from this webinar is the concept of being forward thinking, and what can you do as an organization to be innovative and look outside of the box. One of the questions that I asked, because both Jason and JP do a lot of work overseas, and they are co-hosts of a podcast series called Breaking Banks, which was created by a gentleman named Brett King that's written a lot of books on just the disruption that's going on in the financial space is in China and Japan and kind of the Asia Pacific area, as well as in Europe. There has been a lot of innovation going on in this vertical. One of the examples that we gave during the webinar was, if you wanted to send money to somebody else here in the United States, it's sometimes a very convoluted process, and in most cases you probably aren't going to even be able to use your financial institution. You might be able to use a service like Venmo or PayPal, Facebook, Apple, the messaging program. But unfortunately, for a lot of financial institutions, especially the smaller community banks, which tend to provide a little bit more hands-on customer service, their platforms really haven't gotten with the times to give that what's referred to in the industry as P2P payments, which you can see at the bottom of the slide here that's being used as the cover slide for the webinar replay. So figuring out ways that people-to-people payments can be facilitated. And if you live in Europe or China and you want to send folks money, you just hop into your bank and you say, who do you want to send money to? And you do it. And it gets done, it happens instantaneously, it's very seamless. And they've been doing it for quite a long time. And it's kind of a running joke when I talk to my international friends that are part of the WSI world, that while we like to think of ourselves here in the United States as technological innovators and leaders in a lot of different industries, in some areas we're actually pretty far behind. And so they take some of that insight and knowledge and perspective and bring it into the American banking system, and the banks that really want to make a difference and move the needle and understand that competition is growing beyond just the bank across the street. Just like as business owners, obviously we don't get just banks that participate and listen to free webinar Wednesdays. So as a business, take a look at your industry, take a look at where the threats exist, and it's probably not the widget manufacturer across the street, across the state, or maybe even across the country. It could be an international, it could be a completely new entrant. There was some discussion during our conversation yesterday related to the impact of like an Amazon getting into offering checking accounts through a partnership with Chase. Who would have thought 5 years ago that an organization like Amazon, that was basically created to sell books and sell books online, would end up ultimately getting into the financial services space? They're in the healthcare space. Warren Buffett, very successful, wealthy investor, and his Berkshire Hathaway organization and Amazon are partnering to look at healthcare and how that is kind of a broken process here in the United States. And who would have thought that Amazon would be a healthcare player? And is that disrupting, or has the potential to disrupt folks in the insurance industry? So the competition, if anything, came out of this webinar, and a lot of stuff came out of it because we had really, really good conversation. Part of me wanted to clone myself and become a FinTech person, in addition to being able to do all the digital marketing and online stuff that I get to do, but there's just not enough time in the day, unfortunately. But a lot of the conversation really set the stage, even though it was maybe more focused around the banking industry, of really what should your industry be thinking about as it relates to competition and remaining relevant, especially moving forward as technology is kind of knocking these barriers to entry down, and making sure that you've got the right partners, that you understand the key functions, what are the things that your customers really want from you versus what you think that they want, because that's what they wanted a year, 2, 5 years ago. And so if you have some time, understand that it obviously has a little bit of a banker feel to it, but I think that any organization, any industry really could get some nice takeaways of how FinTech Forge is helping businesses in their vertical really get beyond this whole innovation challenge, and think about how you are getting beyond that innovation challenge within your organization, whether that's culture, whether that's cost, whether that's regulatory requirements or compliance or security, whatever the case is. Because if you're not thinking innovatively and getting outside of the box, at some point somebody will, and then that box that you're in may end up going out of business at some point down the road. So if you are so inclined, I would encourage you to just pop over here to the Banker Education Series blog and check that out. If you'd like to learn more about some of the other services or other webinars that we've done, you can go to the banking industry, or actually probably the easiest way to do that is just change the after the .com/BES for Banker Education Series, and that'll take you directly to the main page. And so we've got the recording here, and then another several that we've talked about as it relates to just the banking world. So also coming very shortly, which again, a little bit of a banker field, but still relevant to any industry nonetheless. I had the pleasure of spending time yesterday with Mr. Jack Hubbard from St. Meyer and Hubbard. Jack does a lot of sales training, primarily in the financial services space, but he and I have been talking quite a bit about different ways to engage and get our banker friends that are somewhat culturally sensitive and maybe unable to or afraid of engaging through social media. And we talked about the whole concept of content and what constitutes great content, why you should be sharing information, how do you find that information. So his webinar series is called 10 Minutes With, and I will tell you that it is much longer than 10 minutes. And if we take a look, I'll just show you how you go about finding information about that if you're so inclined to check out some of the other past interviews that Jack and the St. Meyer and Hubbard folks have done. But you go over to the SM and H domain, and if you check out menu, you go into their performance insights area, which is where they've got a lot of different articles on way to perform better. And if you scroll down a little bit on this, you will see that there is a section called 10 Minutes With. And so ideally they're 10-minute conversations, but they all go over that. And so here you will see very soon a 10 Minutes with Eric Cook talking about content, ways to use it. We share tools such as Flipboard and Google Trends and Answer the Public, Buffer, different ways to find content, curate content, how you can actually leverage data that exists within your own LinkedIn profile. So when you're producing content, I know one of the questions that Jack asked yesterday was, well, how do you know what content is working and what times of the day or days of the week work best for actually delivering content? And those are all available to you, particularly in LinkedIn, as metrics as part of your posting process, just to get an idea of, where, when people are seeing that information. And we talked about, don't discredit posting on the weekends, because if your audience is executive level folks, and a lot of them will hop on the computer and check up email and get caught up outside of 9 to 5 hours, and they may engage or read content, or they get up really early. Early bird gets the worm, as they say. So, should you be posting content, at 5:30 or 6 in the morning while people are getting on consuming information with their morning cup of coffee before they get the day rolling? So keep an eye on this. I'll be sure to let everybody know when that actually posts and they've got all the editing done. But I had a great conversation with Jack, and it was really a joy. I'm pretty excited. He and I are both on faculty at the Graduate School of Banking in Madison, Wisconsin, and I'm going to be joining him at their sales and marketing school also in October later this year. So some really good stuff. So with that, those are the things that I thought I'd like to just chat about today. I realize that there's probably not a whole lot of folks that have joined just because of the URL snafu and some other stuff. We'll put some instructions out there, and hopefully if you're seeing this, you've gotten my instructions on how to go through and actually update and make sure you've got the right URL. But those of you that were able to make it live or have been able to watch this on replay, hope you enjoy some of those resources. Check out that webinar with Jason and JP, maybe get some insights for your own industry. Reach out if you've got ideas to share or thoughts. would love to chat. And with that, we'll go ahead and we'll bring this week's / first episode of the year to a relatively short close, almost 15 minutes in the can. So anyway, enjoy the rest of your week. Keep an eye on your inbox schedule-wise, but we will see you on a future episode here at freewebinarwednesdays.com. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.